And traction is any action that pulls you towards what you said you were going to do with your time and attention, which means, this is very important, you cannot call something a distraction unless you know what it distracted you from. Let me say that again. Write it down if you can. You cannot call something a distraction unless you know what it distracted you from. So if you have a calendar with lots of open white space, you cannot say you got distracted, because what did you get distracted from? Which means, unless you're a child or you're retired, you have to schedule every minute of your day. I'm sorry. I know this is going to rub people the wrong way, but I need my time to be creative, but I need my time to be accessible to my team. What if my boss wants me? I can't possibly schedule. Yes, you can. All those excuses you hear in your head, and let me tell you, I've said them all to myself. I've heard them over the years from all kinds of people. And what we find is that by far, the most effective time management technique you can possibly use after mastering those internal triggers is to schedule your days, or someone will schedule them for you. And that means down to the minute based on your values. Now, this doesn't mean your day needs to be filled with work. I want you to schedule time to watch videos on YouTube. I want you to schedule time for video games. I want you to schedule time with your family. Whatever is important to you and your values, put on your calendar. That is the only way that we know the difference between what is traction, what is on our calendar, and everything else becomes a distraction. So you can take those otherwise distracting things that you think are pulling you off course, and by putting them on your calendar, you're essentially taking distraction and turning it into traction. By making time for traction, what you're doing is you're planning the input. Our input is our time and our attention, not the output. We know that people who only plan output, these are people who follow to-do lists. By the way, to-do lists are one of the worst things you can do for your personal productivity, because to-do lists are nothing but registers of output. It's what we want to have done. But of course, without input, you can't get output. So it's much more important to only schedule the things that to plan for that input of the things that must go into the output. And that is again, our time and our attention. I want you to stop measuring yourself by how many cute little boxes you checked off. That turns out to be a very ineffective technique for several reasons, mostly because to-do lists have no constraint. You can always add more to a to-do list. And this is why we come home from work every day exhausted, and then we look at our to-do list and we still haven't finished everything, and then we feel like losers. And what does that do for our psyche? If day after day, week after week, month after month, year after year, you're constantly reminded, hey, you didn't do what you said you were going to do, loser. So a much better tactic is to time box that task and not care about finishing it. What? Did you hear me correctly? Yes. Don't worry about finishing the task. Your only metric of success should be, did I do what I said I was going to do for as long as I said I would without distraction? That's it. It's not about finishing. It's not about checking those cute little boxes. It's about, did I do what I said I was going to do for as long as I said I would without distraction? And it turns out, here's the kicker. People who use this method, people who measure themselves simply by that one metric of, did I do what I said I was going to do for as long as I said I would without distraction, they finish more. They actually are more productive. They live out their intentions much, much better than the to-do list devotees, because when they simply focus on one thing at a time, they have feedback to understand how long things take. This is called the planning fallacy. We know that people on average take 3 times longer to finish a task than they estimate. Why does that happen? Because I say to myself, oh, I'm going to finish that project. I'm going to finish those slides. I'm going to finish that proposal. But then I start working on it for 10 minutes, and then, oh, I've got to check that email. And oh, my boss needs something. And oh, I better do this and that. And it turns out that we never get a good assessment of how long things actually take. Whereas when we use a time box schedule, and we only measure ourselves by, did we do what we said we're going to do for as long as we said we would without distraction, we can look back on that time slot and say, okay, I worked on that for 30 minutes and I finished about 2 out of 20 slides. Okay, that means I need 10 more time boxes to finish the whole project. And this is how we get a feedback loop to understand how long things take us.